6 months had passed since humanity revealed its true nature to the galaxy. 6 months since the demonstrations that had shattered every assumption about power, technology, and the natural order of civilizations among the stars. The galaxy was quiet now. Not the silence of death, but the peace that comes when children finally stop fighting and start listening to the adults in the room. Ambassador Kyung-Soo Lee floated in zero gravity above the rebuilt Nexus Prime, addressing the reformed Galactic Assembly from a podium that defied conventional physics. The symbolism was deliberate and unmistakable. Humanity no longer bowed to anyone else's rules about how things should work. Around him, delegates from 847 different species listened with the quiet attention of students who had learned that their teacher could make their homework assignments vanish into other dimensions if they misbehaved. The Terran Accords are not complicated, Kyung-Soo explained, his words simultaneously translated by quantum AI systems that the aliens were still trying to understand. Slavery ends, genocide ends, wars of conquest end, piracy ends. These are not requests. These are not suggestions. These are the new rules of galactic civilization. In the audience, the former High Counselor Threk of the Corvan Empire shifted uncomfortably. His people had released their human prisoners within hours of Captain Jina Han's demonstration. They had also discovered that 3,000 years of treating other species as property had made them very unpopular with their former victims. "What about our traditional territorial rights?" asked the Zephyrian representative, their crystal form pulsing with nervous light. Kyung-Soo smiled. It was a patient expression, the kind that teachers used with slow students. Your traditional rights included the right to strip mine inhabited worlds and relocate entire populations to labor camps. Those traditions are now extinct. The Zephyrian delegates' light dimmed. Like most of the galaxy's former powers, they were learning that their old ways of doing business had become not just impossible, but ridiculous. How do you threaten someone who can relocate your weapons into other dimensions? Admiral Min Jung-yu commanded the Galactic Peacekeeping Force from her flagship, the UES Dokdo, a vessel that served more as a mobile diplomacy platform than a warship. Around her, officers from dozens of different species worked together with an efficiency that would have been impossible under the old system. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Commander Jae-hyun Seo, a former Terran Defense Force officer who now coordinated anti-piracy operations across 3 spiral arms. "The Outer Rim pirates have sent another surrender request. That makes 47 groups that have given up operations this month." Min Jung nodded. Piracy had become a very unpopular career choice once word spread that human peacekeeping ships could appear anywhere without warning and relocate entire criminal fleets to empty systems with notes explaining why stealing was wrong. "What's the status on the former Vextar territories?" she asked. "Surprisingly peaceful," Jae-hyun replied. "Turns out that when you remove the Vextar Empire's ability to threaten everyone, their former victims are quite good at governing themselves. We've had requests from 17 species asking for help setting up democratic governments. The transformation had been remarkable. The Vextar, once the most feared military force in the galaxy, had discovered that their entire society had been built on the ability to frighten other species into submission. When that ability disappeared, they found themselves faced with the choice of learning to cooperate or becoming irrelevant. Most had chosen cooperation. On Earth, Director Hyo Jin Cho supervised the Galactic Integration Project from the New Geneva headquarters. Her job was perhaps the most challenging in human space, teaching an entire galaxy of former enemies how to live together peacefully. "The preliminary reports are encouraging," she told her assistant, Dr. Moon-Soo Park, as they reviewed integration statistics. "Trade volume is up 400%. Scientific collaboration has increased by over 1,000%. Military spending galaxy-wide has dropped to its lowest level in recorded history." Moon-Soo looked up from his datapad. "What about resistance movements? Are we still getting reports of species trying to rebuild their old military capabilities?" Hyo-jin smiled. 2 groups tried to build secret weapons programs last month. We relocated their research facilities to the middle of their capital cities with big signs explaining what they had been doing. The embarrassment was so complete that both governments collapsed within a week. The beauty of humanity's approach to galactic peacekeeping was that it required almost no violence. When you could make weapons simply stop working, make secret facilities appear in public places, and make hostile fleets find themselves sitting in empty space, billions of miles from anywhere, traditional military resistance became pointless. President Tsai Byul-kim often reflected on the strange turn of events that had made humanity the galaxy's reluctant rulers. From her office in Seoul, she could see the United Earth Space Command headquarters where Admiral Do-hyun Shin coordinated the most powerful military force in galactic history, a force that spent most of its time delivering medical supplies and building infrastructure. The monthly reports from the colony worlds are in, Secretary of Galactic Affairs Dong-wook Han told her during their weekly briefing. The former Corvan slave colonies are showing remarkable progress. Literacy rates are up, infant mortality is down, and they've established functioning governments on 43 worlds. Sabiel nodded. What about the former Vextar conquest zones? Even better. It turns out that most of the species the Vextar conquered were quite advanced before being subjugated. Give them basic freedom, and they rebuild their civilizations within months. We've had requests from over 100 worlds asking to join the Terran Federation. That was the most surprising development of all. Species that had been conquered centuries ago were emerging from oppression to discover that their liberators were not conquerors themselves, but protectors who actually meant what they said about self-determination and freedom. Captain Jun Ho-yoon stood on the bridge of the UES Explorer, humanity's first intergalactic vessel, as it prepared for a journey that would take them beyond the edge of known space. His mission was elegantly simple: find out what else was out there and make sure it understood the same lesson the galaxy had learned. "Sir," reported his navigation officer, Lieutenant In-ho Kwan, "all systems are green. The enhanced dimensional full drive is ready for the first intergalactic jump." Junho smiled. The galaxy they were leaving behind was finally at peace, but the universe was vast and full of unknowns. If there were other civilizations out there, other galactic communities, struggling with the same problems of war and oppression, then maybe humanity could help them too. "Take us out," he ordered. "Let's go see what's on the other side of forever." Back on Earth, in a small apartment in Tokyo, former Ambassador Ji-woo Park sat with his family, reading bedtime stories to his young daughter. The man who had delivered humanity's final warning to the galaxy was now a civilian again, content to let others handle the complexities of governing a peaceful universe. His daughter, 5-year-old So-jin, looked up at him with curious eyes. "Papa, why do all your stories have monsters that turn out to be nice?" Ji-woo smiled and tucked her into bed. "Because, sweetheart, sometimes the scariest-looking people are really the ones trying to protect you, and sometimes the nicest-looking people are the ones you need protection from." "But how do you tell the difference?" "You watch what they do when they think no one is looking," he replied. "Good people try to help others even when they don't have to. Bad people hurt others even when they don't gain anything from it." So-jin nodded seriously as if filing away important information. "Are we the good people, Papa?" Ji-woo thought about the galaxy his species had reluctantly taken charge of. A galaxy where former slaves were learning to read, where conquered species were rebuilding their civilizations, where the strong finally protected the weak instead of preying on them. "I think we're trying to be," he said, "and sometimes that's enough." Across the galaxy, on worlds that had known only fear and oppression for centuries, children of 100 different species were going to sleep safely for the first time in their lives. Parents who had never dared to hope for better futures were making plans for their children's education. Scientists who had spent their careers developing weapons were turning their talents toward medicine and exploration. The galaxy had learned to speak the language of cooperation instead of conquest. Trade routes that had been controlled by pirates were now protected by peacekeeping forces that appeared like guardian angels whenever trouble started. Research facilities that had once developed new forms of torture were now working on cures for diseases that had plagued their species for millennia. It hadn't been easy. Some species had tested the new order repeatedly, trying to find ways around humanity's impossible technology. They had learned that every attempt to return to the old ways of violence and oppression met with swift, precise, and utterly humiliating correction. The hegemony of worlds had tried to secretly rebuild their collective consciousness network for military purposes. They woke up one morning to find their entire communication system playing children's educational programs about sharing and cooperation. The warning lights flashed red across the control room of Harmony's Edge Station. Commander Veltar's 4 eyes focused on the main display screen as his assistant rushed to his side. "Sir, we have a massive energy reading coming from the outer rim," the young officer said, his voice shaking. "I've never seen anything like it." Veltar looked at the numbers on his screen. The energy output was impossible. No ship in the known galaxy could produce that much power. His people, the Althari, had been running this monitoring station for over 50 years. They watched the peaceful trade routes that connected the 40,000 worlds of the Galactic Trade Federation. Nothing dangerous ever came through this space. "Run the scan again," Veltar ordered. "Check for equipment failure." "Already did." "Sir, 3 times. The readings are correct." The assistant's hands moved quickly over his controls. "Whatever is coming, it's big. Really big." Veltar felt a cold fear in his stomach. The Federation had not seen war for 800 years. The 12 species that made up their alliance had long ago chosen peace over conflict. They shared technology, resources, and knowledge. They had built a perfect society based on cooperation and understanding. "How long until it arrives?" Veltar asked. "Based on current speed, approximately 6 hours, sir. Send a message to Federation Command. Tell them we have an unknown vessel approaching. Request instructions for first contact procedures." The next 6 hours passed slowly. More ships appeared on the sensors, all following the same impossible energy signature. By the time the first ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, Veltar counted 12 massive vessels in formation. The lead ship was unlike anything in the Federation database. It was dark gray, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. Scars marked its hull from countless battles. Gun turrets the size of small buildings pointed in every direction. This was not a merchant ship or explorer vessel. This was built for war. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. "Put it on screen," Veltar ordered. The image that appeared made Veltar step backward. The creature on the screen was tall and lean, with pale skin and dark hair. 2 eyes stared directly at him with cold intelligence. This was obviously the ship's captain, but his species was completely unknown. "I am Captain Lee Hyun of the human warship Iron Will," the figure said in perfect Federation standard. "You will provide us with navigation data, population centers, and defensive positions for all systems within 50 light-years of this location." Veltar blinked in confusion. The captain's words were spoken like an order, not a request. I welcome you to Federation space, Captain Lee Hyun. I am Commander Veltar of the Althari. We are honored to make first contact with your species. Our standard procedure is to— "Commander Veltar," Captain Lee interrupted, "you misunderstand. This is not a first contact situation. This is a military assessment. You have 10 minutes to compile the requested data." "Military assessment?" Veltar repeated. "I'm afraid I don't understand. The Federation has no military. We are a peaceful alliance of trading worlds. Perhaps there has been some mistake?" Captain Lee's expression didn't change. "No mistake, Commander. Your cooperation will be noted in my report. 10 minutes." The transmission ended, leaving Veltar staring at a blank screen. His control room was silent except for the hum of computers. Finally, his assistant spoke up. "Sir, what do we do? They're asking for classified information about Federation worlds." "I don't know," Veltar admitted. "We've never faced anything like this before." On the human warship Iron Will, Captain Lee Hyun turned away from the communication console and walked to where Dr. Kim Sora was studying sensor readings of the alien station. "Well?" he asked. Dr. Kim looked up from her instruments. She was younger than the captain, with kind eyes that seemed out of place on a warship. "The station has no weapons, no shields, no defensive systems at all. The aliens appear to be exactly what they claim. Peaceful traders." "And the crew?" "Approximately 300 individuals from at least 4 different species. Their biology shows no signs of aggressive evolution. In fact, sir, I think they may have evolved past the need for violence entirely. Captain Lee nodded grimly. It was exactly what they had hoped to find, and exactly what they had feared. Continue your scans. I want a complete biological and psychological profile of every species we encounter. Captain, Lieutenant Bayuna called from the tactical station. I'm reading 12 more ships approaching. Federation vessels, but they're not military. Diplomatic ships, Captain Lee guessed. They're sending negotiators. Within an hour, the Federation ships had arrived. They were sleek, beautiful vessels painted in bright colors with no visible weapons. The lead ship requested permission to dock with Harmony's Edge Station. Captain Lee watched on his main screen as the Federation diplomats met with Commander Veltar. The aliens were even more diverse than Dr. Kim's scans had suggested. There were tall, thin creatures with blue skin and multiple arms. Short, furry beings that looked like earth animals. Insect-like species with compound eyes and delicate wings. But they all had one thing in common. None of them understood what they were facing. Captain, his communications officer announced, Admiral Park is requesting a private channel. Captain Lee moved to his ready room and activated the secure communication system. The image of Admiral Park Ji-won appeared on his screen. She was older than Lee, with gray hair and the bearing of someone who had seen too many battles. Report, Captain, she said without preamble. The initial assessment is complete, Admiral. The Federation is exactly what our long-range intelligence suggested. 40,000 inhabited worlds with a combined population of over 2 trillion beings. No military, no weapons, no concept of territorial defense. Admiral Park's expression grew grim. Technology level? Advanced in many areas. Their medical technology is centuries ahead of ours. They've achieved post-scarcity economics across multiple sectors, but their weapons technology is practically non-existent. Any sign they know about the Devourers? None, Admiral. They've never encountered a hostile alien species. War is not just unknown to them, it's incomprehensible. Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment. In the background, Captain Lee could see the war room of Terra Command on Earth, 50,000 light-years away. Officers moved between holographic displays showing the desperate defense of humanity's remaining colonies. Admiral, Captain Lee said carefully, are we really going to do this? These people are innocent. They've built something beautiful here. Captain, you've seen the projections. You know what we're facing. The Devourers will be here in less than 50 years. When they arrive, they'll consume everything, human and Federation alike. At least this way some of us might survive. Yes. Ma'am? Begin Phase 2 preparations, Captain. But remember, we're not conquering these people to rule them. We're conquering them to save them, even if they don't understand that yet. The transmission ended, leaving Captain Lee alone with his thoughts. Through his window, he could see the peaceful Federation ships docked with the monitoring station. The aliens were probably still trying to understand what humans were, still believing this could be resolved through diplomacy and mutual understanding. He activated his ship's internal communication system. All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for Phase 2 operations. Department heads report to the briefing room in 30 minutes. Back on Harmony's Edge Station, Commander Veltar was meeting with the Federation diplomatic team. Ambassador Kethmol, a senior diplomat from the insectoid Velkari species, was trying to make sense of the situation. Commander, Ambassador Kethmol said, have these humans made any hostile moves? Not exactly hostile, Veltar replied, but they demanded military information. When I tried to explain our first contact procedures, they dismissed them entirely. Perhaps they come from a region of space where conflict is more common, suggested Dr. Nalthor, a scientist from the aquatic Meridani species. There are still unexplored areas of the galaxy. But why would they need military information if their intentions are peaceful? Asked Commander Yilsara from the Federation patrol ship Gentle Current. And those ships? I've never seen vessels designed purely for war. Ambassador Kethmol clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. We should try to understand their culture. Perhaps they simply approach first contact differently than we do. I've been monitoring their communications, Veltar said. They're using military protocols and terminology I don't recognize. Their ship's database is heavily encrypted, and they've been scanning our systems in ways that seem invasive. Invasive how? They're not just learning about our technology. They're mapping our defenses, all of them. Every system, every station, every world within 50 light years. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Ambassador Kethamol spoke. Commander, I want you to send a message to these humans. Invite their captain to meet with us face to face. If we can establish dialogue, we can resolve any misunderstandings. On the Iron Will, Captain Lee received the invitation 30 minutes later. He discussed it briefly with his senior officers, then responded with a single word. Agreed. 2 hours later, Captain Lee materialized on the transporter pad of Harmony's Edge Station, accompanied by Dr. Kim Sora and Lieutenant Bae Yuna. The Federation had never seen transporter. 3 days after taking control of Harmony's Edge Station, Dr. Kim Sora had filled 12 data files with her observations of Federation biology. She sat in the Iron Will's science lab, studying tissue samples from volunteers among the station's crew. What she found disturbed her more each day. Captain, she said when Lee Hyun entered the lab, you need to see this. Captain Lee approached her workstation, where holographic displays showed detailed genetic analyses. What am I looking at, Doctor? The evolution of pacifism, Dr. Kim replied grimly. The Althari, for example, had their aggressive instincts bred out of them over 2,000 years ago. Look at these brain scans. The regions that control territorial behavior and combat responses are severely underdeveloped. Bred out how? Social engineering. Their ancestors decided that violence was counterproductive to civilization, so they systematically selected against aggressive traits. The process was so thorough that modern Althari literally cannot conceive of intentional violence. Captain Lee studied the data. What about the other species? Dr. Kim brought up more displays. Similar patterns across all 12 species we've encountered. The Velkari evolved past individual aggression through collective consciousness. The Merdani eliminated competitive instincts through genetic modification. Every single species has found a way to remove violence from their nature. Which means that even if they wanted to resist us, they couldn't. It's not just that they choose not to fight. They're biologically incapable of it. Captain Lee was quiet for a moment. How many species in total? Based on the Federation database that Engineer Choi accessed, there are 12 major species and over 300 minor ones. All follow the same pattern. The Federation represents the largest concentration of intelligent life in the known galaxy, and none of them can defend themselves. The captain nodded grimly. Continue your research, Doctor. I want profiles on every species we're likely to encounter. 2 decks below, Engineer Choi Taemin was having his own revelations. He had connected to the Federation's central database through the station systems, and what he found amazed him. Lieutenant Bae, he called to his assistant, look at these resource surveys. Lieutenant Bae Yuna left her own console and joined Choi at the main display. What she saw made her whistle softly. Is this accurate? She asked. Triple checked. Choi confirmed. The Federation controls resources equivalent to 10,000 Earth-class worlds. Rare metals, energy sources, agricultural capacity. They have more wealth than humanity has ever dreamed of. And it's all undefended? Completely. Look at these shipping routes. The display showed a complex web of trade lines connecting thousands of worlds. Merchant vessels carry cargo worth billions of credits, protected by nothing more than navigation. Beacons. Lieutenant Bae studied the star charts. What about their technology? That's the interesting part, Choi said, bringing up new data. In some areas, they're centuries ahead of us. Their medical technology could extend human lifespans to 300 years. Their agricultural systems could feed our entire population with the output of a single world. But their weapons technology doesn't exist. They have tools, construction equipment, even some mining lasers, but nothing designed specifically for combat. They focused all their technological development on improving quality of life. How is that possible? Engineer Choi shrugged. When you don't have wars, you don't develop weapons, simple as that. Meanwhile, in the station's main conference room, Ambassador Kethamol was trying to understand the humans who had taken over his world. Commander Veltar sat beside him, still in shock from the swift and bloodless capture of his station. The humans had been surprisingly gentle conquerors. No one had been killed or seriously injured. The station's crew were confined to quarters but otherwise unharmed. Their basic needs were met, and they were even allowed to continue routine maintenance work under supervision. I don't understand their motives, Ambassador Kethamol said to Veltar. If they wanted our resources, they could simply have asked. The Federation has always been willing to share. But they spoke of conquest, Veltar replied. And this enemy they mentioned, something that will consume everything. Do you think they're telling the truth? I don't know. Their behavior suggests they're not motivated by greed or malice. There's something desperate about them. Their conversation was interrupted when Captain Lee entered the room, accompanied by Dr. Kim Sora and a human they hadn't seen before. Ambassador Commander, Captain Lee said, I'd like you to meet Engineer Choi Taemin. He's been studying your database. Engineer Choi stepped forward, carrying a portable holographic projector. With your permission, I'd like to show you something. Do. We have a choice? Commander Veltar asked bitterly. Actually, yes, Captain Lee replied. This presentation is voluntary, but I think you'll find it educational. Ambassador Kethamol clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Very well, show us. Engineer Choi activated the projector, filling the room with a three-dimensional star map. This is the known galaxy as recorded in your database. 40,000 inhabited worlds, connected by trade routes, governed by peaceful cooperation. Yes, Ambassador Kethamol confirmed. The Federation represents the pinnacle of civilized development. Now, Engineer Choi said, adjusting the display, this is the same map showing defensive capabilities. The star map changed. The bright lights representing Federation worlds dimmed to almost nothing. The trade routes turned red, indicating vulnerability. Whole sectors showed zero military presence. I don't understand, Commander Veltar said. What are we looking at? You're looking at 40,000 worlds that couldn't stop a single determined warship, Engineer Choi explained. Your entire civilization has no defenses whatsoever. We don't need defenses, Ambassador Kethamol protested. We've had peace for 800 years. Dr. Kim stepped forward. Ambassador, may I ask you something? In your species' history, what happened to those who preferred violence over cooperation? They were discouraged, Ambassador Kethamol replied carefully. Over many generations, our society selected for cooperative traits over competitive ones. And the others, the violent ones, they died out, or left, or were exiled to the outer rim. Dr. Kim nodded. Which means that for 800 years you've been surrounded only by other peaceful species. But what if there's something out there that didn't choose peace? Impossible, Commander Veltar said firmly. Intelligence naturally leads to cooperation. Any species advanced enough for interstellar travel would understand that violence is counterproductive. Captain Lee spoke for the first time since the presentation began. Commander, what you just said represents the most dangerous assumption in the history of your species. He gestured to Engineer Choi, who changed the display again. This time, the star map showed a region of space beyond the galactic rim, marked in threatening black. 57 years ago, Captain Lee said, humanity made first contact with a species we call the Devourers. They're silicon-based life forms that consume organic matter and convert it to energy. They don't negotiate, they don't trade, they don't even communicate. They simply consume everything in their path. The display showed the progression of the Devourer invasion. Red indicators swept across dozens of systems, leaving empty space behind. We fought them for 200 years, Captain Lee continued. We lost 170 colonies. Billions of human lives were consumed. Our military technology advanced faster in 2 centuries than it had in the previous 1,000 years. But you survived, Ambassador Kethamol said. Barely. And only because we became something your people can't imagine. a species dedicated entirely to war. Dr. Kim activated her portable scanner and projected new images. These showed human ships, weapons, and military installations. The technology was clearly more advanced than anything in the Federation database. Every human child learns weapons theory before mathematics, she explained. Our entire economy is focused on military production. We've turned our species into the most efficient killing machine in the galaxy. But why are you telling us this? Commander Veltar asked. Captain Lee's expression grew grim. Because long-range sensors show the Devourer advance fleets are less than 50 years from the outer edge of Federation space. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Ambassador Kethamal spoke. You're saying that this enemy will reach our territory? I'm saying this enemy will consume your entire civilization in less than 10 years once they arrive. Captain Lee replied bluntly. 40,000 worlds with 12 trillion inhabitants, all defenseless against an enemy that sees them as nothing. But food. But surely we could build defenses, Commander Veltar protested. With 50 years of preparation. Commander, Engineer Choi interrupted, your entire species is biologically incapable of violence. How exactly would you build weapons? When the concept of harming another being is literally incomprehensible to you, we could learn, Ambassador Kethamal said desperately. Dr. Kim shook her head sadly. Ambassador, my biological analysis shows that your species has evolved past the ability to learn violence. It would take thousands of years of genetic modification to restore aggressive instincts to your people. So what are you saying? Commander Veltar demanded. That we're doomed? No, Captain. The mining colonies in the Kepler Reach had operated peacefully for over 300 years. 5 worlds rich in rare metals, connected by automated cargo ships that moved resources throughout the Federation. The colonies were home to nearly 2 billion beings from 6 different species, all working together in harmony. Commander Ryu Hana stood on the bridge of the transport ship Liberator, watching the peaceful worlds grow larger on her main screen. Behind her ship, the human fleet stretched for thousands of kilometers. Troop transports, engineering vessels, and supply ships protected by Captain Wang Jihe's warship Sovereign's Edge. Commander, her tactical officer reported, we're receiving standard traffic control signals from the colonies. They're requesting cargo manifests and destination ports. No response, Commander Ryu ordered. Maintain course for the primary world. Captain Wang Jihe's voice came over the communication system from her warship. Commander Ryu, I'm detecting 12 orbital defense platforms around the main world. Armed? Negative. They appear to be traffic control and navigation aids. No. Weapons signatures. Commander Ryu studied the tactical displays. The Federation colonies were exactly as Captain Lee had described. Wealthy, advanced, and completely defenseless. Even their orbital platforms were designed for peaceful purposes. Begin Phase 4 operations, she ordered. The human fleet split into precise formation. Captain Wan's Sovereign's Edge moved toward the orbital platforms with a squadron of smaller ships. The troop transports headed for the planet's major population centers. Engineering vessels positioned themselves near industrial facilities. On the main colony world of Kepler Prime, Administrator Yel Noth was enjoying his morning meditation when his assistant rushed into the office. Administrator, we have a problem. Unknown ships have entered the system and they're not responding to our traffic control. Administrator Yel Noth was a tall, thin being with blue skin and 4 arms. His species, the Mordani, had been part of the Federation for over 500 years. They had never experienced anything more threatening than the occasional equipment malfunction. How many ships? He asked calmly. Over 200, sir. And they're large. Administrator Yel Noth activated his office's main display, showing the incoming fleet. What he saw made him step backward in shock. These were clearly warships built for combat, approaching his peaceful world with obvious hostile intent. Send a message to Federation Command, he ordered. Tell them we need immediate assistance. I've been trying, sir. Something is jamming our long-range communications. Before Administrator Yel Noth could respond, every screen in his office activated with the same image. A human face with cold, determined eyes. This is Commander Ryu Hana of the Human Defense Force, the figure said. I am addressing all inhabitants of the Kepler Reach colonies. Your worlds are now under human protection. There will be no resistance, no negotiations, and no delays. Administrator Yelnoth found his voice. This is Administrator Yelnoth. I protest this violation of Federation space. Our colonies are peaceful. We have no quarrel with your species. Your protest is noted, Commander Ryu replied calmly. All governmental functions are suspended as of this moment. Colony administrators will report to designated assembly points within 4 hours. But this is impossible. The Federation has treaties, agreements. The Federation no longer has authority in this sector. Human ground forces will begin, landing in 20 minutes. Any interference with our operations will be dealt with severely. The communication ended, leaving Administrator Yelnoth staring at a blank screen. Around him, his staff looked equally shocked and confused. Sir, his assistant asked, what do we do? I don't know. Administrator Yelnoth admitted. We've never faced anything like this. 20 minutes later, human ships began landing in the main population centers. Commander Ryu Hana personally led the landing at Kepler Prime's capital city, bringing 2,000 human soldiers equipped with advanced weapons and armor. The local population's reaction was exactly what she had expected. Instead of fleeing or fighting, they gathered in curious groups to watch the humans deploy. Many of them had never seen soldiers before and didn't understand what they were witnessing. Commander, Lieutenant Park Sun-ho reported, the local security forces are requesting instructions. Commander Ryu looked at the approaching Mordani security officers. They carried basic equipment for maintaining order, communication devices, medical scanners, and crowd control barriers. Nothing that could be considered a weapon. Tell them to stand down and return to their homes, she ordered. Ma'am, they're asking what they should tell the population. Tell them the population should continue their normal activities under human supervision. The security officer who approached Commander Ryu was an elderly Mordani named Kelman. He had maintained order in the capital city for over 40 years without ever facing a serious crisis. Please, Kelman said, I don't understand what's happening. Are we under attack? Are our people in danger? Commander Ryu studied the old security officer. Like all Federation species she had encountered, he radiated genuine concern for others and complete confusion about the concept of conquest. No one will be harmed if they cooperate, she said. Your people will continue their normal lives. The only difference is that humans will now provide security and governance for your worlds. But why? What have we done wrong? You've done nothing wrong. This is not about punishment. Then what is it about? Commander Ryu looked at the gathering crowd of aliens watching her soldiers. They seemed more curious than afraid, still not understanding that their world had just been conquered. It's about survival, she said finally. Across the 5 colony worlds, similar scenes played out as human forces took control of government facilities, communication centers, and industrial sites. The local populations offered no resistance because they simply didn't understand what resistance meant. On Kepler Secondary, Captain Kim Jianho found himself in control of the system's main mining operations. The facility produced rare elements critical to advanced technology, managed by a combination of automated systems and skilled Velkari technicians. The Velkari were insectoid beings with natural aptitude for complex engineering. Their hive mind structure made them incredibly efficient at coordinating large-scale projects. When Captain Kim's forces arrived, the Velkari workers simply continued their tasks, waiting for someone to explain what was expected of them. Foreman Zichtel approached, Captain Kim with clicking mandibles that indicated confusion. Human Commander, we have received conflicting instructions. Our Federation supervisors tell us to resist your presence, but we do not understand this concept. What would resistance look like to you? Captain Kim asked, genuinely curious. We do not know. Perhaps stopping work? But that would harm the colony's productivity, perhaps hiding. But that would be inefficient. Perhaps. Zichtel paused, his compound eyes reflecting puzzlement. We do not understand what resistance means. Captain Kim realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in human military history. A conquered population asking how they should resist their conquerors. Continue your normal work, he told Zichtel. Human supervisors will coordinate with your management structure to ensure continued productivity. And our Federation supervisors? They are relieved of duty. All governance functions are now human. Responsibility. Zichtel clicked his mandibles in what Captain Kim had learned was the Velkari equivalent of acknowledgement. This is acceptable. Productivity will continue. On the research station orbiting Kepler Tertiary, Dr. Liland was having a very different reaction to the human conquest. Unlike most Federation species, the Quarani had retained some curiosity about conflict, though they had never practiced it themselves. Dr. Liland was a xenobiologist who had spent decades studying the evolution of intelligence across different species. When human soldiers arrived at her station, she immediately began taking notes. Fascinating, she murmured, observing the humans' military efficiency. You move with coordinated purpose, maintain weapons readiness, and establish defensive positions automatically. This suggests behavioral adaptation for group conflict. Sergeant Lee Minho, who was leading the station takeover, paused in his deployment. Ma'am, you're supposed to report to the designated assembly area. Oh yes, of course, Dr. Liland replied absently, still taking notes. But first, may I ask about your species' psychological adaptations? Your stress indicators suggest you find this activity unpleasant despite your obvious competence. Sergeant Lee blinked in surprise. In all his military experience, he had never had a conquered population ask him about his feelings during the conquest. Ma'am, please report to assembly, he repeated. Certainly, but I'm recording observations about human behavior under conquest conditions. Your species exhibits signs of moral stress despite tactical success. This suggests ethical development concurrent with military capability. Dr. Liland continued making notes as she walked toward the assembly area. Most intriguing, you have evolved the ability to feel guilt about necessary actions. Back on Kepler Prime, Administrator Yel Noth was experiencing his own revelations. He had been brought to a human command center established in the colony's main government building. Commander Ryu Hana was reviewing colony records on holographic DI. 3 months after the human conquest of the Kepler Reach, the first Devourer scout ships appeared at the outer edge of Federation space. The automated sensor station at Relay Point Gamma detected them first, massive biomechanical constructs that registered as both living tissue and advanced technology. The station's peaceful Althari crew had no context for understanding what they were seeing. Station Commander, Technician Polwin reported, I'm reading 12 unknown vessels approaching from deep space. Energy signatures don't match any known Federation designs. Station Commander Niltar reviewed the sensor data with growing confusion. The approaching ships were enormous, each one larger than a Federation city, and they moved with purpose through space at impossible speeds. Send standard first contact protocols, he ordered. Mathematical sequences, universal greetings, trade, negotiations. The response came quickly. The unknown ships fired beams of coherent energy that cut through Relay Point Gamma's hull like paper. Within minutes, the station and its crew of 300 beings were consumed, converted into raw energy to fuel the Devourer advance. The loss of Relay Point Gamma triggered automatic alerts throughout the Federation communication network. Within hours, emergency sessions were convened on dozens of worlds as leaders tried to understand what had happened. On Earth, Admiral Park Jiwon received the news in Terra Command's war room. She studied the sensor recordings that had been transmitted. Before the station's destruction, her expression growing grimmer with each image. Dr. O, she called to her chief analyst, how does this timeline compare to our projections? Dr. O. Minji manipulated the holographic displays, showing the revised Devourer advance. They're moving faster than expected, Admiral. Previous estimates put first contact at 47 years. Based on these readings, they could reach core Federation space in as little as 30 years. And our preparations? Operation Liberation has secured 12 key systems with approximately 50 billion Federation inhabitants under human protection. Industrial capacity is at 200% of previous estimates. General Nam Ki-hoon approached the central command table. Admiral, Captain Im's battle group is requesting permission to engage the scout fleet. Admiral Park considered the request carefully. Captain Im Dong-yun commanded humanity's newest and most powerful warship, the Unconquerable, along with a full battle squadron of advanced vessels. Negative, she decided. We're not ready for direct engagement. The Federation needs to see what we're facing first. Admiral? General, the Federation still doesn't fully understand the threat. They need to witness a devourer attack before they'll accept the necessity of our protection. 6 hours later, the devourer scout fleet reached the Althari colony of Peaceful Harbor. The world was home to 8 billion beings who had never experienced violence in their recorded history. The attack was swift and brutal. The bioships descended through the planet's atmosphere, deploying smaller organisms that consumed everything organic they encountered. Buildings, vehicles, and technology were broken down and absorbed. Within 12 hours, Peaceful Harbor was a lifeless rock. But this time, there were witnesses. Captain Lee Hyun's Iron Will was positioned just outside the system, monitoring devourer tactics and recording everything. The images were transmitted immediately to Federation Command and every major world in the galaxy. On the Federation capital world of Harmony Prime, the Prime Collective watched the recordings in stunned silence. 12 species leaders who had governed through cooperation and understanding for 800 years found themselves facing something utterly incomprehensible. Prime Coordinator Velmar of the Althari spoke first, his voice shaking. This is impossible. Intelligent species don't simply consume other intelligent beings. The evidence suggests otherwise, replied Science Coordinator Leland, who had become the Federation's leading expert on human psychology after her experiences in the Kepler Reach. These devourers represent evolution along a completely different path, one where consumption took precedence over cooperation. But surely they can be reasoned with, insisted Trade Coordinator Yilpen. All intelligence seeks mutual benefit. Coordinator, Leland said gently, you're applying Federation logic to beings that don't share Federation values. The humans warned us about this. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Defense Coordinator Morthek spoke. Coordinator Leland, what do the humans recommend? Full cooperation with their protection protocols. Immediate evacuation of all Outer Rim colonies, and acceptance that our civilization cannot survive this threat without military guardianship. You mean conquest. I mean survival. The debate continued for hours, but was interrupted by urgent communications from across Federation space. More Devourer scout fleets were appearing throughout the Outer Rim, consuming everything in their path. Colony after colony fell silent. Worlds that had existed peacefully for millennia were reduced to empty rock within days. The Federation's first contact with true galactic predators was devastating. On the human command ship Iron Will, Dr. Kim Sora was analyzing devourer biology from the sensor readings. What she found was both fascinating and terrifying. Captain, she reported to Lee Hyun, the devourers are unlike anything we've encountered before. They're not just silicon-based, they're hybrid organic technological entities. Meaning, they can adapt their biology in real time. Every ship we've observed has been slightly different, as if they're constantly evolving new forms. Captain Lee studied the biological data. How do we fight something that evolves during combat? The same way humanity has always fought them. With overwhelming firepower and tactics they can't adapt to quickly enough. And the Federation? Dr. Kim's expression grew sad. Captain, Federation biology makes them ideal prey for the devourers. Their peaceful evolution has created species that are not only incapable of violence, but actually attractive to predators. Explain. The devourers consume not just organic matter, but also mental patterns and memories. Federation species have rich, complex mental structures built around cooperation and creativity. To the devourers, they're the equivalent of a delicacy. Captain Lee activated his communication system, connecting to Admiral Park on Earth. Admiral, Dr. Kim's analysis confirms our worst fears. The Devourers aren't just consuming Federation worlds, they're targeting them specifically. Admiral Park's image appeared in the holographic display. Captain, I'm receiving reports of Devourer attacks throughout the Outer Rim. How many systems have been lost? 47 in the past week. If this rate continues, they'll reach core Federation space in months, not years. And Federation response? The Prime Collective is calling for emergency sessions. Some members want to negotiate, others want to evacuate. A few are finally accepting that they need our protection. Admiral Park was quiet for a moment. In the IEISA background, Terra Command buzzed with activity as humanity's military leaders coordinated the largest defensive operation in their history. Captain, you are authorized to begin Phase 5 operations, full military intervention. Admiral, that means revealing our complete capabilities to the Federation. Yes, it's time they understood what we've been building for the past 2 centuries. Within hours, human warships began appearing throughout Federation space. But these were not the conquest fleets that had taken the outer colonies. These were humanity's true battle fleets, hundreds of advanced warships designed specifically for fighting Devourers. Fleet Admiral Song Min Seok arrived in Federation space aboard his flagship, the massive dreadnought Indomitable. His fleet included over 300 warships, each one bristling with weapons technology that surpassed Federation understanding. Captain Im Dong-yun's Unconquerable led the advanced squadron, accompanied by ships whose names reflected humanity's 2-century war. Vengeance, retribution, never again, ever. Last stand. The Federation populations who witnessed the human fleet's arrival were stunned by its size and obvious military purpose. These were not the relatively small conquest forces they had seen before. This was a war machine built on a scale that peaceful species couldn't imagine. On Harmony Prime, the Prime Collective watched the human fleet deploy with a mixture of awe and terror. Science Coordinator Lil End provided commentary as the massive ships took defensive positions. The lead vessel is over 8 kilometers long, she reported. Its weapon systems could destroy a small moon. The escort ships are each larger than our biggest trade vessels. How many ships in total? Asked Prime Coordinator Velmar. Current count is over 300, with more arriving every hour. Defense Coordinator Morthek studied the tactical displays. How did they build such a fleet? Our intelligence suggested humanity controlled only 30 systems. They built it, Leland replied, because they had to. Every resource, every scientific advance, every industrial development has been focused on military capability for 2 centuries. And now, they're using it to protect us. To protect everyone. The first major engagement came when a Devourer advance fleet approached the Federation core world of New Harmony. The system was home to 12 billion beings from multiple species, all completely defenseless against the approaching bioships. Fleet Admiral Song positioned his battle group between the Devourers and the planet, with the Indomitable at you.